Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A knock on the door changed everything. One man's quiet Nevada inheritance became the center of a massive land fraud, fake signatures, corrupt officials, and a battle that would shake an entire community. This isn't just about land, it's about who really owns the truth. I inherited the land from my grandfather, a sprawling open stretch of over 300 acres in northern Nevada. Not the kind of land you'd build a cabin on for weekend getaways, but the kind that stretches so far you lose cell signal walking across it. It was dry, wide, quiet, peaceful, even when the wind kicked up enough sand to make your truck groan. My grandfather called it freedom in square miles, and after he passed, I never had the heart to sell it. Besides, I didn't need the money. I had my own work, my own life. The land was just there, untouched, unbothered. Like a sleeping dog in the sun. About a year ago, I got a knock on the door. Literally, a knock. No email, no letter. Just a well-dressed woman standing outside my front porch, her heels crunching on the gravel like she owned the place already. She introduced herself as Karen Van Allen, president of something called Sage Hollow Estates. She handed me a folder, all smiles and polished teeth. They were building a residential development nearby, she said. Very upscale, very community-oriented, family values, and all that prepackaged American dream fluff. The HOA had apparently bought some land adjacent to mine and was in a pinch. They needed temporary access to part of my southwest field to store construction materials and equipment. Just for a few months. 6 to be precise. They also needed a small access road built through my corner so trucks could pass through and get to the build site without having to make a longer detour. I was suspicious. HOA types gave me hives, but she came with a neatly printed contract, stamped with a notary seal, and offered a small thank you fee, $1,500, basically a handshake in legal currency. I didn't need the field, and it was tucked far away from anything I used regularly. They weren't asking for ownership, just temporary access. All spelled out in black and white. I took a couple of days to run it by a lawyer who shrugged and said it looked clean. So I signed. I didn't expect much more after that. They dropped off some pallets of cinder blocks and plastic-wrapped lumber, then a few excavators and porta-potties showed up. All standard stuff. The crew was polite enough. I even brought them water a couple of times when I drove past. That corner of my land turned into a minor construction support area. A big nothing burger. Then, in early summer, I left for a dig in Colorado. Archaeology gig I'd been planning for months. Remote camp. No reception, tents, and dust and stone tools buried for centuries. It was heaven. I was gone for just over 10 weeks. I remember it clearly because when I came back, everything changed. The first sign that something was off came when I turned off the highway toward my land and saw a freshly paved road, wide, smooth, and lined with streetlights. It sliced through my field like a vein. At first I thought I'd taken the wrong turn, but then I saw my fence, what was left of it, lying in a pile of splintered boards. I pulled over, stared, then I drove in. There were houses, dozens, real fully built modern two-story homes with driveways, satellite dishes, porch swings, uniform beige siding, rows upon rows of them stretching deep into my land. It wasn't a materials depot, it was a goddamn suburb. At least 60 homes already stood tall. Another 20 or so were in various stages of construction. Trucks buzzed around like flies. Workers carried lumber. Someone was spraying insulation into a wall cavity. Kids on bikes zipped between scaffolds. I almost crashed into a porta-potty. I stopped one of the site supervisors, a guy in a vest holding a tablet, asked him what the hell was going on. He smiled like I was the town mayor come to visit the ribbon cutting. "You must be Mr. Shaw. We were told you'd be stopping by." "Great to meet you, sir. We've got everything on track. HOA told us you were the owner and approved the full build-out. We've already submitted the subdivision plan to the county." I stared at him like he had just told me I'd been voted Best Supporting Actress. "What documents?" I asked. He tapped his tablet and flipped it around to show me a scanned PDF. My name. My signature. A legal document transferring rights for residential development for 99 years to the Sage Hollow HOA. It had a notary seal and a signature. Mine. Or rather, a damn good forgery of mine. I didn't say anything. Just walked back to my truck in silence. Sat there with the engine idling. My stomach felt like someone had poured concrete into it and didn't bother to mix. I called Karen. No answer. Tried again. Voicemail. I drove straight to the HOA's regional office. Marble floors, water wall in the lobby, faux serenity. The receptionist gave me a corporate smile, welcome, asked me to wait. When Karen finally came out, she was all pleasantries and perfume. "Oh, Derek, so good to see you. We were just about to reach out and discuss your involvement going forward." "What the hell is going on, Karen?" She blinked, practiced surprise on her face. "I thought you knew." "The original agreement evolved into something more ambitious. You had verbally approved." "Cut the crap. That signature's fake. I never signed anything beyond the 6-month access." She gestured toward a manila folder on her desk, slid it over like she was showing off a dinner menu. Inside, a hard copy of the document the contractor had shown me. Same fake signature, dated 2 days before I left for Colorado. "You'll find that this document is legally binding," she said. "But we're open to collaboration. You're still the deed holder, technically, which means you'll receive a generous percentage of the unit sales. We see this as a partnership." I saw it as fraud. I stood up, left the folder on the table, and walked out. Didn't say another word. 2 days later, my attorney was on the case, and I was done playing nice. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. The more I thought about it, the more surreal it became. These people hadn't just squatted on my land. They'd steamrolled over every boundary, legal and ethical, with the casual arrogance of someone rearranging furniture in a hotel room. I kept hearing Karen's voice in my head. "You'll receive a generous percentage of the unit sales." Like she was offering me a slice of my own damn pie. By dawn, I was already on the road, heading back out to the land I supposedly still owned. This time, I didn't stop at the entrance. I drove straight in past a half-built playground, weaving between concrete trucks and porta-johns, until I hit the heart of the construction zone. I parked my truck in the middle of the access road like a barricade and got out. The foreman on duty recognized me instantly, probably had my face on a "be nice to this guy" memo. "Mr. Shaw, we really need you to coordinate with the HOA office. We're under the impression everything's cleared." "Cut the script. I'm the legal owner of this land and none of this is cleared. Where's your supervisor?" He called someone. Then someone else showed up. Then another. Within an hour, I was standing in front of 3 suits and a site planner who kept nervously adjusting his tie like it was strangling him. They showed me the same fake document again. I asked them point blank who gave it to them. They said the HOA through their legal representative. I asked for that name. They hesitated. One of them, Jeff, I think, finally admitted they'd never spoken directly to me, never saw the original signature in person, never verified title transfer through the county. The whole thing ran on the assumption that the HOA was acting with authority. And I was just some passive landowner cashing checks. I wasn't cashing a damn thing. I left before someone tried to sweet-talk me again. The look on their faces said they knew things had gone off the rails, but no one wanted to be the first to yell fire in a burning house. Back home, I tried calling Karen again, straight to voicemail. I tried emailing her. No reply. I even walked into the HOA office the next day, but she was unavailable due to scheduled travel. How convenient. The receptionist offered to schedule a future meeting with someone from the board. I told her the next person I'd be meeting with was a judge. That same afternoon, I met with my attorney, Henry Corrigan. Guy's built like a bulldog and has the legal instincts of a rattlesnake in a suit. I dropped the folder with the fake contract on his desk. He flipped through it, frowning deeper with each page. "Signature's trash," he muttered. "And this date's a joke. You were out of state by then. We'll need to prove it, but if we can, this becomes criminal fast." He set the folder down and looked up. "We need to find out how this got past the county." So we got to work. The first step was a full geodetic survey. We brought in a licensed team with drones, topographical scanners, and a very expensive lawyer smile. Within 72 hours, they mapped out the entire parcel. The results were crystal clear. Every single one of the 100 homes, finished or not, was located squarely within my land's legal boundaries. Next came the hunt for the notary whose seal was on the document. It didn't take long. Turns out the notary, a man named Gregory Dalton, had no idea his seal had been used. When we showed him the contract, he blinked like we'd slapped him. "I never notarized this," he said. "I've never even met this person. That's not my signature next to the seal." We asked him to provide a sworn affidavit on the spot. He did. That was the moment things shifted in my mind. Up until then, part of me hoped this was just a bureaucratic cluster, a chain of incompetence. But that affidavit turned the whole thing into a bomb. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated. Corrigan filed a formal cease and desist, sent notices to the contractor's HOA and the building inspection office. We didn't accuse yet, but we made damn sure everyone knew we were preparing for court. Then came the paranoia. 2 days later, I noticed a black SUV sitting outside my driveway. It didn't move for over an hour. When I approached, it drove off slowly. I checked my mailbox and found a realtor brochure for luxury homes at Sage Hollow, with a map that clearly showed my land as part of the subdivision. I wasn't listed as the owner. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at that map. The house was quiet, the only sound coming from my old fridge humming like a tired dog. My land, my family's land, had been digitally erased and overwritten like a bad Photoshop job, all with a smile and a fake signature. I lit a cigarette I hadn't touched in years. This was war now. The news broke faster than I expected. After we filed the cease and desist, I figured they'd pause the construction, maybe stall for time, send their own lawyers sniffing around before anything public happened. But less than 48 hours later, a local news van was parked just off the service road, broadcasting a live segment about landowner fraud in the Sage Hollow development. Some drone footage showed rows of identical beige homes on my land, overlaid with bright red outlines marking my property boundaries. Apparently, the surveyors had leaked the footage to the press. I wasn't mad. In fact, I watched the segment with a beer in hand and a bitter smirk. Let the HOA try and PR their way out of that one. The next morning, construction slowed to a crawl. Some contractors left entirely. Others stood around in awkward clusters like kids caught cheating during a group project. By noon, the HOA finally called me back. Karen wasn't on the line. Some guy named Elliot from their compliance team offered to clear the air and discuss a path toward resolution. I told him the only thing I'd be discussing was which judge would be hearing the fraud case. He said I was being hostile. I said I'd seen the fake signature again that morning and nearly vomited on it. He hung up. That same day, Corrigan brought in a second attorney, Melissa Tran, a bulldog in heels with a specialty in property crimes, and, as she put it, creative fraud. She took one look at our paperwork and said, "This is attempted land theft with a paper trail. They're toast." Together, we prepared for the real punch, filing the formal lawsuit in district court. But before we could finalize the complaint, Corrigan got an unexpected call. A man named Tom Grayson, site coordinator, worked for the general contractor, said he wanted to talk off the record. We met him at a diner off Highway 50, the kind of place that hadn't changed since the Reagan administration. He showed up nervous, looking over his shoulder like he expected to get tailed by a bulldozer. He was in his early 30s, construction boots still dusty, wearing a high-vis vest under a windbreaker. He ordered black coffee and didn't touch it. "I don't want to be part of this anymore," he said. They knew. Corrigan raised an eyebrow. Knew what? Tom slid a flash drive across the table. "I was on the planning calls," he said. "I heard them talk about the timing, about Mr. Shaw being out of state. They knew the paperwork wasn't signed. They pushed ahead anyway. The guy who gave the green light, he even joked about how no one checks county records anymore." "Who's they?" I asked. He listed off names: Karen, 2 board members from the HOA, and the senior VP from the development firm. Then he added something that made my jaw tighten. There was a guy from the planning department, too, county side. I don't know if he was bribed or just lazy, but he let it slide. Corrigan didn't smile. He just leaned back and exhaled slowly, like he'd been handed the keys to a very expensive car and was already planning the test drive. "You willing to testify?" he asked. "If I get immunity," Tom said, "and I want a statement in the filing that I came forward first. I didn't forge anything. I didn't authorize it. But if this hits the fan, I'm not going down with them." Corrigan nodded. "Fair." We walked out of that diner with more than we'd hoped for. That flash drive had internal emails, meeting minutes, and even a memo from Karen herself outlining accelerated construction approval, despite title transition issues still in progress. It was a smoking gun packed inside a glitter bomb. We filed the civil suit that Friday. Fraud, forgery, criminal trespass, constructing without title or permit, breach of contract, violation of real estate code, theft of private property. It was a legal apocalypse packed into 40 pages. We also submitted Tom's statement and the notary's affidavit as exhibits. The judge issued a temporary restraining order halting all construction on my land. A marshal was dispatched to post it at the site entrance. The next morning, the workers were gone. The porta potties were still there. Karen, however, remained invisible. No calls, no emails, no passive-aggressive holiday postcards. So I did what any rational man would do. I drove down to her HOA office, walked right through the front door, and asked the smug receptionist where their fearless leader had vanished to. "Mrs. Van Allen is on an extended leave," she said, voice sharp and expression blank. "I bet," I replied. "If she comes back, tell her the guy whose land she tried to steal says hi. And he brought lawyers." I left before I could get arrested for loitering with intent to gloat. When the marshal posted the restraining order, it wasn't some dramatic slow-motion movie scene with sirens and megaphones. It was a dude in khakis with a clipboard and a roll of tape. He walked up to the construction site gate, unrolled the court document, taped it to the chain-link fence, and drove off. 5 minutes tops. But that piece of paper might as well have been a wrecking ball. By the end of the day, half the contractors had packed up. The other half stood around waiting for instructions that never came. Equipment sat idle, engines silent. The site transformed from a frenzy of construction to a graveyard of half-built dreams, complete with abandoned ladders and forgotten lunch coolers. And then the emails started coming in. At first, they were polite, future homeowners asking what the delay was. Then came the not-so-polite ones, threats of lawsuits, refund demands, accusations of fraud. One guy even called me personally, said he'd already sunk $100,000 into a down payment and his pregnant wife had picked out the nursery. I told him I was sorry, but it wasn't my fault. He didn't believe me. I sent him a PDF of the lawsuit. He didn't reply. Meanwhile, Karen's radio silence continued, but the HOA itself wasn't staying quiet. They launched a full-on PR campaign, started sending letters to homeowners claiming I was obstructing community progress and withholding previously agreed-upon development rights. They even published a statement on their website claiming I had verbally committed to a joint venture and was now reversing course for personal gain, which was a bold move considering they forged my signature. Corrigan's team filed a motion for defamation. At the same time, we sent formal notices to every buyer who had entered a purchase agreement on the Sage Hollow homes, every last one of them. Each letter included a full explanation of the situation, a copy of the court order, and a very clear warning. The property you paid for doesn't legally belong to the HOA, or the developer, or you. It belongs to me. Then the dam really broke. Within a week, over 24 buyers had filed separate claims against the HOA, the developer, and Karen personally. A few even joined our civil suit. One particularly pissed-off couple hired their own forensic handwriting analyst just to prove the signature wasn't mine, and ended up with the same conclusion we already had. Karen's name started popping up in places it didn't belong. Fraud databases, real estate alert systems, even a Reddit thread titled HOA Karen Tries to Steal Ranch Fails Spectacularly. The story had gone viral. Local news picked it up again. Then regional. Then, somehow, a morning show out of Los Angeles called and asked if I'd be willing to appear on air to talk about land rights, property justice, and the fight against suburban tyranny. I declined, but I wasn't going to lie. I laughed so hard I nearly pulled something. Somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, my attorney called with an update. The insurance company just pulled out, Corrigan said. HOA's coverage won't back them on this. Too much exposure. They cited fraudulent activity and policy exclusion clauses. What about their accounts? Frozen. The bank locked their operational funds until a resolution is reached. They can't even pay their lawn service right now. I leaned back in my chair and let that sink in. The HOA was bleeding from every orifice. And Karen, still missing. That is, until a reporter tracked her down outside a gated golf community near Lake Tahoe, caught her walking to her car in sunglasses and an athleisure hoodie, Starbucks cup in hand. They asked if she had a comment on the lawsuit. She smiled tightly and said, "It's all a misunderstanding." Then she got in her Lexus and drove away. But we weren't done yet, because Corrigan got a call that changed everything. The Nevada State Licensing Board had opened an inquiry into the construction firm that partnered with the HOA. Why? Because the same forged document was used to acquire materials, secure loans, and even sell homes to buyers. That meant wire fraud, bank fraud, interstate commerce violations. And suddenly this wasn't just a civil case anymore. It was turning criminal. By the time we reached the courthouse steps, the air was thick with reporters, clipboards, microphones, and enough cameras to make it feel like a murder trial. Corrigan walked beside me, his suit crisp, his expression unreadable. Melissa Tran followed just behind, flipping through a binder like she was about to deliver an opening statement to the Supreme Court. We weren't here to play defense. We were here to burn the whole damn thing down. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Contractors, buyers, a few curious HOA members clutching their little spiral notebooks like prayer books. Karen wasn't there, but her attorney was. A slick little weasel with a haircut so sharp it could have sliced drywall. He looked like he spent more time practicing smug smirks in the mirror than actual law. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Dolores Martin, took one glance at the forged deed and raised an eyebrow so high it probably dislodged ceiling tiles. Corrigan presented the original 6-month access agreement. Tran followed with the geodetic survey, notarized affidavits, and forensic reports. Then she dropped the bomb, the flash drive from Tom. Karen's attorney objected. "Your Honor, we haven't reviewed." Judge Martin cut him off. "You'll get your chance. For now, let's listen to what your client's partners were really doing." They played the audio of a Zoom meeting, Tom's recording, Karen's voice clear as crystal talking about fast-tracking permits before the landowner returns. And it's not like anyone checks property lines in the middle of nowhere. The courtroom was silent. Karen's lawyer looked like he'd swallowed a live ferret. Then came the forensic handwriting expert. She compared my actual signature, the one on the original agreement, to the one on the forged deed. Her conclusion was immediate and damning. The signature on the development deed is a deliberate forgery, consistent with simulated tracing. It is not authentic. After that, the notary testified. Poor Gregory looked like a man who just learned his good name had been used to launder heroin. "I've never notarized that document," he said, voice shaking. "I wasn't even in the state that week." The HOA's legal team scrambled, tried to pivot, claimed there was a verbal agreement. Judge Martin asked for proof. They had none. Then they tried to argue I had benefited from the development's value. Corrigan leaned forward. "Your Honor, my client did not benefit. He was stolen from." Martin nodded slowly. Then she looked at Karen's attorney. "You're going to want to advise your client to appear at the next hearing, in person." We left the courtroom with the kind of momentum that can't be faked. The lawsuit had teeth now, and claws, and fangs the size of legal telephone poles, and the fallout came fast. The very next day, the Nevada Attorney General's office contacted us. A criminal investigation was officially underway. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, wire fraud, falsifying real estate records, you name it. I half expected someone to yell "RICO" just for sport. Meanwhile, Tom got a call from a whistleblower hotline. They wanted to know if he'd be willing to testify in a parallel state investigation. He said yes. The guy had gone from just following orders to full-on informant with a vengeance. I told him if he ever wanted a job that didn't involve lying to subcontractors, I'd hire him in a second. Then came the real gut punch for the HOA. Judge Martin issued an injunction. All construction permanently halted. No sales. No permits. No funding disbursements. The land, my land, was declared off-limits to the Sage Hollow development, effective immediately. And the cherry on top, the court subpoenaed Karen. When she showed up at the next hearing, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf like some B-list celebrity caught shoplifting, the judge wasted no time. "Mrs. Van Allen, are you aware that falsifying legal documents carries up to 15 years in prison under Nevada law?" Karen tried to weasel her way out of it. "Your Honor, I believe this is all a misunderstanding. There was a mutual interest, and perhaps the documentation was accelerated due to timing. But Mr. Shaw verbally..." Judge Martin held up a hand like she was swatting a fly. "Save it. You will remain present for the remainder of these proceedings. And I strongly suggest you retain criminal counsel." As she said it, a deputy sheriff walked over and handed Karen a separate envelope, an official notice of pending criminal charges. The silence in that courtroom could have drowned a thunderstorm. Once the injunction was official, everything fell apart like wet drywall. Work crews disappeared overnight. Excavators sat abandoned like skeletons in a sun-bleached battlefield. The only sound left on that stolen land was the wind whipping through empty frames and loose insulation wrap. But the silence didn't last long. Buyers started showing up. Angry, confused, betrayed, some in tears, some furious enough to throw punches if they had a target. One guy, in a suit that looked like it had survived 3 funerals, walked straight up to me while I was inspecting the property line and said, "You're the thief." I didn't flinch. "I'm the owner." He blinked. "No, I paid for this house. I've got a signed purchase agreement, and I've got a land deed that goes back 3 generations. The people who sold you that agreement forged a fake contract with my name on it. You want to be angry? Be angry at them." He didn't say another word, just turned around and kicked a bag of Quikrete so hard his shoe turned gray. That week, over 50 prospective homeowners received the same cold reality check. Their dream houses were built on stolen dirt. Some had already moved furniture in. A few had been sleeping there. One woman went into labor right there on the porch of an unfinished duplex when she learned the sale was void. EMTs had to drive around my gate because the HOA had never officially filed for updated municipal access. Corrigan coordinated with local law enforcement to make sure no one else entered the area without clearance. We weren't heartless. We let them collect belongings, photographs, whatever they had. But the legal fact remained. The structures were trespassing on my property. Just very expensive, well-insulated trespassers. The lawsuits came next. Rapid fire, class action suits, individual claims. A multi-party complaint filed in federal court citing interstate wire fraud. Karen's name was now on more legal documents than most mob bosses. The HOA board, 2 of its members resigned the same day. The rest stopped responding to media inquiries. Their website was taken down. Their customer service line routed to an error message. It was like the organization evaporated under pressure. And that's when the insurance bomb dropped. The HOA's carrier formally denied all liability, said the fraud voided their entire policy. No payout, no legal defense coverage. They even threatened to sue the HOA themselves for misrepresentation. Then the banks stepped in. Funding lines for the development were frozen. Mortgages issued under invalid property transfers were halted mid-process. Buyers couldn't close. Developers couldn't pay subcontractors. Subcontractors couldn't pay employees. The entire ecosystem of shady suburban capitalism collapsed under its own bloated arrogance. The builder, Black Ridge Development, cut their losses. They issued a public statement. Due to legal uncertainties, Black Ridge will cease operations at Sage Hollow effective immediately. They walked away like a hit-and-run driver, leaving Karen and the HOA flattened in the rearview mirror. Meanwhile, Tom kept delivering. Emails, text messages, meeting recordings, even a spreadsheet showing planned bribes to fast-track inspections. Corrigan handed it all to the state attorney. Word got back that Karen had attempted to cut a deal, offered to flip on her county contacts if the AG's office would consider leniency. They declined. Too little, too late. The prosecutors already had enough from Tom to start pressing charges against a whole network of officials who'd looked the other way. Permits pushed through without title checks. Site inspections passed despite code violations. One building inspector had apparently signed off on 20 homes while vacationing in Mexico. The feds were getting interested now. Things were escalating beyond HOA drama into full-blown corruption scandal territory. And then, one night, I got a knock at my door. It was the same man who'd called me a thief a week earlier. He looked 10 years older. He handed me a 6-pack and a stack of documents. I checked everything. You were right. I'm sorry. I took the beer, nodded, and let him sit on the porch. We talked for an hour about how he and his wife had sunk their savings into a house that didn't legally exist, about how their kid was supposed to grow up there, and how now they were stuck. No home, no refund, no one left to scream at. I didn't know what to say. I just listened. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is shut up. I thought the court hearings were the worst of it. Thought that watching the HOA get legally eviscerated, piece by piece, was going to be the most satisfying part of this whole mess. I was wrong, because what came next was the real reckoning. It started with subpoenas, dozens of them. County clerks, building inspectors, real estate agents, mortgage officers. Anyone who'd touched this project got a thick envelope with their name in bold and the seal of the state of Nevada on the flap. And somewhere in that flurry of panic and shifting alliances, Karen reappeared like a ghost at her own funeral. She looked different this time, deflated. She wasn't walking into courtrooms with her usual country club swagger. She looked like she'd slept in her car. Her scarf was wrinkled, her heels scuffed. But her eyes, those were the same, cold, calculating, and still trying to scheme her way out of the grave she'd personally dug. Her lawyer filed a motion to dismiss the criminal charges, claimed that Karen was not the mastermind, but a facilitator misled by development partners. The judge, predictably, laughed her right out of the courtroom. That's when she made her move. Through back channels, probably her lawyer or some white shoe fixer she'd kept on speed dial, Karen reached out to the district attorney's office, offered them something bigger: names, documents, emails. A full roadmap of how local government officials had taken bribes, looked the other way, even adjusted zoning designations to suit HOA interests. She'd testify, she said, if they reduced the charges. The DA met with her, listened, took her binder, and then said no. Turns out she wasn't the only one snitching. Tom's evidence had already built a strong enough case against the inner circle. His whistleblower status was on file. He'd cooperated early, with no conditions. Karen's last-minute desperation smelled like what it was: a cornered predator offering scraps after the feast. They told her to sit tight. Her trial date would be scheduled soon. The look on her face that day, when she heard the deal wasn't going to happen, wasn't anger. It was fear, real, tangible fear. For the first time, she realized she couldn't talk her way out of this one. That the law didn't care about how many charity galas she'd hosted or which local councilman had shared her wine cellar. Then came the verdict on the civil case. Judge Martin didn't even take long. After reviewing the mountains of evidence, she delivered a ruling that dropped like a meteor. The court finds that Sage Hollow Estates, its board of directors, and its president, Karen Van Allen, engaged in coordinated fraudulent activity, including but not limited to forgery, unlawful construction, and intentional misrepresentation of property ownership. Therefore, all homes constructed on Mr. Shaw's land are deemed unlawful structures. Ownership reverts to Mr. Shaw in full. The defendants are ordered to pay restitution and damages totaling $18 million. I sat there frozen. $18 million. Corrigan leaned in and whispered, "It's not about the number, it's about precedent. This is going to be studied in law schools." Melissa didn't even crack a smile. She just nodded, professional to the last breath. Karen, on the other hand, cracked. She stood up in the courtroom, turned toward the judge, and began rambling about how she only wanted to create a thriving community, that she was pressured by developers, that she'd been betrayed by people on the inside. Judge Martin shut it down with one sentence: "You had every opportunity to do the right thing, and instead chose the fraudulent one. Your actions weren't pressured, they were calculated." The courtroom emptied slowly after that, a parade of broken dreams and shattered smugness. Karen didn't leave. She just sat there, blinking, like she'd forgotten how legs worked. Outside, I was met with reporters again. I didn't give a statement. I didn't need to. The land was mine again. Every brick, every foundation, every carefully staged open-concept kitchen. And as far as the state was concerned, the HOA no longer existed. The day I reclaimed my land for good was quiet. No press, no court bailiff, no HOA board waving brochures at potential buyers. Just me, a thermos of burnt gas station coffee, and a chain I bought at the hardware store, which I looped through the gate myself. I hung a metal sign across it: "Sold, private property. No HOA allowed." It clanged in the wind like a bell, marking the end of something rotten. The court's ruling had made it official. The land, the homes, the development, everything was mine, not just morally, legally. The fraudulent deed was nullified. The insurance companies refused to pay out. The banks wanted their money back. The dream Karen had built out of drywall and deception collapsed into a pile of litigation and mud. Over the next few weeks, I met with real estate experts, actual professionals, not HOA puppets in power suits. Together, we developed a new plan, not to bulldoze the homes. Hell, most of them were solid builds. No, I'd sell them, on my terms. No HOA, no hidden dues, no Karen hiding behind covenants and bylaws. Just land. Mine. Bought fair and square by people who knew exactly what they were getting into. Some of the original buyers came back, quietly, with better lawyers this time. I made a few deals, not all of them. Some couldn't stomach the drama, and I didn't blame them. Meanwhile, Karen was indicted on multiple counts: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, falsification of real estate records, and obstruction. The obstruction charge came from a bold little stunt during the pretrial. She'd tried to contact a witness off the record, probably hoping to clarify some memories. The court wasn't amused. Her bail was revoked. She was cuffed and taken out of the courtroom like a fraudster at prom. The trial moved faster than expected. She pled not guilty at first, tried the "I was misled" defense again. It didn't work. The evidence was too strong. The paper trail was radioactive. When the prosecution played the Zoom recording of her laughing about pushing paperwork through before I returned from Colorado, the jury didn't even flinch. Guilty on all counts. She got 15 years, no parole before 10. Minimum security, sure, but no golf courses, no wine tastings. Just beige walls and group therapy with fellow white-collar inmates who probably cried during sentencing too. In her last statement before sentencing, she tried to pivot again, offered to name more names, said there were still officials in office who had deep connections to multiple HOA projects statewide. The judge didn't even let her finish. The deal window had slammed shut months ago. "You had your chance, Mrs. Van Allen," the judge said. "You chose to weaponize trust and pretend it was business." As she was led away, she glanced at me. Not hate, not defiance, just tired. Like she'd finally realized that consequences weren't a myth. The community changed after that. The development zone was renamed. The HOA formally dissolved, its members legally barred from forming any similar organization in the state for 10 years. A few other projects in the region got audited. Some collapsed. Some narrowly escaped scandal. But people were watching now. The system had been poked in the eye, and it blinked. Tom Grayson testified at trial and was granted full whistleblower protection. He ended up working for a property oversight nonprofit, consulting on ethics in suburban development. He sent me a Christmas card. Said I should plant trees where the HOA office used to be. I liked the idea, so I did. A small grove of native juniper now grows where Karen's glass-walled office once stood, swaying in the Nevada sun like survivors with roots too deep to be ripped out. As for me, I still live here, on my land, in a house I built with my own hands. I sell homes now, not because I wanted to, but because I refuse to let someone else profit from the mess they tried to bury me in. Every transaction I make is clean, honest, and HOA-free. I keep the original forged deed framed on the wall of my study. A reminder, people walk onto land like it's nothing but dirt and boundaries. But land remembers. And mine fought back.